All right, like I always say, I'm the only person here who isn't allowed to be late, and here I am a minute late. Sorry about that. But here we are, Unfound live for May 26th of 2025. I hope everybody is having a great weekend. Of course, this is a 3-day weekend for many people, not everybody, certainly not for me. But of course, government offices, schools, maybe a lot of private businesses choose to be closed on this day as well. Certainly could tell by the number of people out on the beach today that a lot of places are closed. And maybe you are one of those people who had off today as well. I hope you enjoyed it, whatever you are doing. And of course, the reason for this is Memorial Day. And anybody listening or watching, if you're not familiar with this is the day here in the United States where we remember everyone who has died in the military in any war that the United States has ever fought. I guess going the whole way back to the American Revolution. Maybe people who died in the skirmishes that the colonists had as well. Maybe that they're included in here as well. But certainly going back to our Civil War and back early 1800s, of course, 1812. And we're thinking about all of those people, mainly men, of course, some women included in there as well, especially when we start talking about more recent times, the first Iraq War, the second Iraq War, Afghanistan, all of that. I know that other countries do this as well, many other ones, but I don't think they do theirs at the same time. Ours is always the last Monday in May. Likewise, the summer here in the United States is kind of bookended. We have Memorial Day, the last Monday of May, and then we have Labor Day, which is a day to celebrate everybody who works. I guess that's what it is. And that is always the first Monday in September. And that is how in the United States we kind of delineate our summer. So there you go. Today is Memorial Day in the United States. So I have a spectacular show lined up for all of you tonight. I don't know how many viewers we'll have, given that this is a holiday. Don't know, but the show must go on. Even back in the days when I worked in entertainment at Star Trek The Experience, or as a stage manager of a Rack Pack show and the Magic Show. The only day all of those places were never open was on Super Bowl Sunday. Every other day of the year we were open. So I guess that's what I do here as well. But regarding what I'm going to be talking about tonight, at least I'm going to at least get to what is in the headlines. Crypto violence. I want to talk about this guy who was held against his will, and it had to do with cryptocurrency and all of that. That happened in New York City here in the United States. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Also want to go over a Disappearance book that I read over the past week. Actually, I read it very quickly. I read it in a day because that's what I do. And I want to talk to you about that. Won't be able to say a whole ton. I've been in contact with the author, but I had to understand. I set out when I reached out to this guy who wrote this book, and it's a very good book. I'm going to be talking about it. That our conversations would be off the record. He and I talking about my insights, his insights, and everything else. So I'll have to keep that out of it. But certainly, I will give you my insight into these disappearances that occurred. Two young women who went missing in Texas some years ago. And I'll give you the name of the book, the name of the author, if you want to order it for yourself. Just in general, you might want to do that. It's a pretty interesting book, I think. And then I also want to talk about how a true crime podcaster has been charged. And did she plead guilty or whatever? I'll get into it in the article about some things that she said that went into defamatory territory, if not further, and got her in a lot of trouble. And you know that one of my pet topics is media and how things are reported and the way people are going about their business of reporting, not just in true crime, but in all types of media in my own country, the United States. And anybody who's been, maybe it doesn't come up in the podcast, but it comes up here on the live show once in a while. My very, 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 very low opinion of all media reporting here in the United States. And I think I'm free to talk about that, being that that's what I do, my own profession. I think that it's not me pointing the finger at engineers or accountants or anything, where I've never had those jobs. I do this job. I know what it takes. And over the last 9 years, my opinion of all media in the United States, politics, sports, you name it, even weather, it's just plummeted. My attitude has just gotten worse and worse and worse. So I'm going to get into that. So I got a lot to talk about, as I always do. Always try to have more information than I need when I show up here to the microphone on Monday nights. And there are some other things that I'm going to touch upon regarding the podcast and some other news items that I may get to before we're done. As for what has gone on with me since we all got together last, had a really nice disc golf weekend down in Sarasota. Came in second. Actually, had a really, 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 really good chance of winning. My putting let me down on Saturday. I certainly threw off the tee well enough to win. Putting, not the greatest. The guy who won certainly out-putted me. Congratulations to him. I'm very happy for him. Good guy who won. Played with him both rounds. No complaints about him at all. Good guy. Happy for him. But I had my chances to win and didn't excel at that. But if you would have told me that I was going to go down there and finish second, I think there were, 10 guys in my division. I was playing MA50, so all guys over the 50 and over. And I am over 50 years old. If you would have told me that I was going to come in second and actually even kind of really be close to winning, I'd have been ecstatic with that. And that's what happened. And so I just have to be happy for now. But it's really showing me that the work that I've been doing, especially over the past month, because I played a couple weeks ago over at Picnic Island too, where in retrospect, I probably had a chance to win over there. I came in fourth place, but I was only 3 shots from winning. And I did blow 3 shots. Looking back, there were some shots that I wish I could have back. I had a chance to win over there. So I'm doing okay. The practicing that I'm doing, and I did go out this morning, throwing into the net and everything, it's working. Putting, not working. Have to work on that. Don't work on it as much as my throwing off the tee, my driving, I guess you'd call it. Putting letting me down. Have to just give it some more attention. But it was a good weekend down there. Just 1 day, 2 rounds, although 2 different courses. And it was all good. I don't play those courses except for when I'm going down there to Sarasota. Although I did go down there a couple weeks ago and practice one morning. I did drive the whole way down there because I hadn't played down there in a while. And I think that really did help me. So that was good. Came away. It's always good to know that the work you're putting in is helping. And I do play this weekend, but right over here at Taylor, my local course, And if I play like I did this past weekend, I will have a chance to win. There's no doubt in my mind I will have a chance to win at Taylor if I play like it did down there this past weekend. And so so I've had like 3 really good competitive rounds in a row. And so, like I said, the practicing is working. Moving on, trivia this past week. My team was in first place going to the final question. We didn't know it, so we bet 0. So some teams passed us up. No big deal. We actually, even though we didn't answer the final question correctly, we still got 90 some points. And we even actually lengthened our lead in first place in the overall standings. So we're like 50 some points ahead or something like that now. I think before last Wednesday, it was 20 some. So that was fine. Yeah, you answer all those questions, you're in first place. Then you don't know the final question. It's ironic, I guess you could say. But we're doing really well. No complaints there. Although I think in a couple weeks, or not this Wednesday, but maybe next Wednesday, I think I may be playing by myself again because people have other obligations. We'll just have to see. But I think a couple days from now, I think most of the team will be there. So that's going okay. So on that topic of game shows and trivia and everything, have not heard back from Wheel of Fortune yet. I don't know if that means anything or not. But hopefully I will get email number 2 so I can have interview number 2. I'm going to pause here just to see who's in here tonight before I continue and remind everybody about what you need to do while you're watching tonight. Hello, Charlie. What's going on? Texted back and forth with your mother a couple days ago. Lisa, it's hard to beat nephew Charlie in here. Very near forgot to tune in tonight. I keep thinking it's Sunday. It is not Sunday, Lisa. Hello, Amy. Dee, what's going on with you? Good to see you. Everybody should know Dee made me an editor on her YouTube channel. I hope she knows what she's getting into there. Neighborly, what's going on? Everybody's saying back and high-low, back and forth. Hello, Justine. What's going on with you? Good to see you. Lisa says, spent most of the day driving through heavy storms in Kansas. Well, I'm glad you avoided the tornadoes. DD, what's going on in trivia? Right, D. Thank you for the second place. Thank you. I appreciate it, Lisa. He just had a good week. Lisa, their way home, lighting, their way home, by the way. The Unfound podcast channel, Lisa gave you her points on the last 3 cases on trivia. She did. Yeah, Lisa was tuning in. Hello, lighting. How are you? Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Iman, good to see you. What's a heck of a name? Love the name, Iman. And NJ, how are you? Good to see everybody. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in tonight. So moving on, probably the biggest, I don't know if it was it actually was a kind of surprise regarding myself, is last Thursday I got my blood tested. I was supposed to get this done in March, but because of my sleep issues and everything, I wanted to wait until I felt like that was all in order again because what had happened was I went to the doctor back in November and it was okay, but a couple things were, in my blood tests were going in the wrong direction, like cholesterol and stuff. So the doctor made a couple recommendations to me, not any more prescription stuff, but over-the-counter things. And started taking those back in November. And then, of course, the sleep issues kicked in. But I continued to do what he said. And then he wanted me to go get my blood tested again in March. Well, like I said, I wanted to wait until I was sure, that getting, seeing the end of the light at the end of the tunnel for my sleep stuff. And certainly I have. Getting a lot of good sleep. Not every night is not perfect, but I am, sleep has been very positive. In fact, on Saturday night after disc golf, I came home, I ate, and I fell asleep on the couch right over here to my left. I didn't even make it to the bed. I fell asleep on the couch. I slept for like 10 hours. I think I went to bed at 11 and slept, maybe got up maybe a couple times, but slept right till like 9 a.m. No problem on the couch. So it was a very positive experience for me. So finally, I decided last Thursday, got an appointment over there, Quest Diagnostics. Got my so you can still see the little bruise there on my elbow where they took the blood, and I can check my blood results online within 24 hours. They do it very quick. My blood test was the best it has been in 10 years. I could not believe it. Now, what have I, if anybody's interested, well, what did you do, Ed? First of all, you have to understand that I was like 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with high cholesterol. And we know that, can really be an issue if you don't take care of it. Eventually it can cause heart problems, heart attacks, and everything. So I've been on Lipitor, the generic form of it, for about 20 years. Although I don't take a lot. I'm still taking the same dose that I did 20 years ago. And it's 5 milligrams every other day. It's like the generic avorvastatin or whatever it's called. But my cholesterol has been creeping up just a little bit. Of course, I am getting older. Your body becomes less efficient. And it's, kind of expected. And the doctor says, I really don't want to bump up the Lipitor dosage. So why don't you try this? So I have been taking daily a vitamin D supplement. I've also been taking a niacin pill. I forget how many milligrams, and a fish oil / omega-3, like 2,200 milligrams or something, every day since November. That's what I've been doing. Once again, over-the-counter stuff, no prescription stuff. And then also the 5 milligrams of the generic Lipitor every other day. That has done wonders for my blood. I mean, when I saw my blood results on Friday night, I mean, everything was in the green. Almost everything was in the green. And the things that weren't in the green that are still a little high, they are on a, trajectory toward going back into the green. I have to admit, when I first read it, I was like, this has to be somebody else's test. This can't be my blood. They made a mistake. No, that was mine. And so to think that even though I've had some sleep issues over the past 6 months, but still doing all that other stuff actually has made me, I guess, healthier, is really, really noteworthy. I was stunned. And of course, when I told my dad about it, he was happy to hear about it as well. Now, the only thing left for me, though, is I need to lose a couple pounds. It's obvious that, the issues that I've had with sleep over the last 6 months, I'm still recovering. My body is still recovering from that because my metabolism has really kind of gone into the tank. Now, I'm not, I mean, technically I am overweight, but, there's a lot of things that go into that. But, I'm up in like the high 180s, and I really should be in like the mid to high 170s is probably where I should be. But my metabolism has taken a poop since because I think of the sleep issues, and I think it's still coming back. So It's not, thank you, Lisa. That's really the only thing that's going on with me with health wise. Now, I mean, I still get my aura, I still get my silent migraine headaches, where I get the little flashes in my eyes. And I do have a couple days once in a while where I get tired in the middle of the day and I'll take like a 15-minute snooze. But that's really about it. As far as anything, even my eyesight was getting I thought I was having some issues with my eyesight and like reading screens and everything. That's gone away over the past month. That must have been connected to my sleep as well. So that's what's been going on with me regarding my health. And so we'll keep doing that. I don't think that I need to bump any of the things up that I'm doing. I think that if I keep doing that, those items that are good are just going to continue to get better. And the things that are just a little out of whack, I would not be surprised the next time I get my blood tested, probably, I don't know, November something. It wouldn't surprise me if everything is back in the green. And I have a blood test where, all these different things that are measured, like 40 different parameters or something measure. All of them are in the green or something. That would not surprise me. I don't want to get my expectations too high. But so I guess what I'm saying is anybody out there, if any of this is sounding familiar to you regarding your health and any blood issues you may be having, the combo of vitamin D, niacin, and the omega-3 works. And this is not some like late night infomercial or anything like this. This is just over the counter stuff. Doctor says, hey, why don't you try this, see what happens? And there you go. Because I really haven't changed my eating that much. So there you go. What is everybody saying? You're welcome, Iman. Lisa, so glad you're rocking age 44 or 54, Lisa. Thank you, Ed. Healthy Food Fund. Thank you. $2. That's going to really go far, Lisa, and I'll take it. Lighting, I've been on Zepbound. It has done wonders for me. I had trouble losing weight with a thyroid issue. Yeah, I don't know, Lighting, if I need to get any weight loss drugs. I know that Wegovy and Ozempic, and I know that's works for people, happy for them. I don't think I need to go to this direction. It's just 10 pounds. I think my impression of people who's using it's like they need to maybe lose like 50, 60, 70 pounds. Me, I think I just have to try, get my metabolism bumped up again and, just have to be patient with it, which isn't the easiest thing for me. I'm not the most patient person you've ever met or known. I haven't been to a doctor since 2008, other than 2 times for x-rays after falling downstairs. Lisa, you got to go. None of my business how old you are, Lisa, but even if you were 25, I would be telling you shouldn't go 17 years without going to a doctor. It's probably not a good idea if your plan is to be on this earth for a little while. Me, as a guy, I have no problems going. I know a lot of men afraid of going to the doctor, and that's why a lot of guys end up having heart attacks. All the signs are there, but they still want to go. I don't know. Me, I don't mind going to the doctor every 6 months and getting checked out and everything. I'm kind of into it. I don't know. D says, well, boyfriend takes the one that starts with O and has his losing weight. Yeah, Ozempic, D, I think it says. Congratulations to him. It's weird how that side effect of that Ozempic is working for everybody. Great. Lighting says, true. Ozempic, that's one powerful. Yeah, Lisa, I'm your age, Ed, but I know. Yeah, you got to go. You got to go. The thing is, Lisa, you have to think of it this way. You don't do it now. Eventually, you're going to have to be going to the doctor for all the wrong reasons. And you may find out that you could have avoided it had you gone and seen your doctor right now. That's what you want to avoid. It very well may be that you go there and you're, well, Lisa, you're a pretty healthy woman. That's fantastic. But of course, Father Time always wins, and just depends on how long you want to, be around. So the last thing you want to do is go to the doctor 5 years from now, and the doctor says, well, if you would have come and seen me when you were 54, we could have avoided this. That's what, for me, that's what I'm trying to avoid myself. That's what I'm trying to avoid. I don't want this hindsight 2020 kind of stuff. So that's why I go. And my doctor's a cool guy too, so I don't mind going and seeing him and BSing for a half hour or whatever. It's a fantastic doctor. My brother Brian also has him. Yeah, he's losing. I'm finding it, but he's losing. I'm finding it. I don't know what that means, D. Charles, I just had perfect blood work too. All green. I was kind of surprised. I've been taking the generic Lipitor and do the intermittent fasting for a little over a year. Good for you. That seems to work for our genetics, Charlie. That seems to work. I needed you to tell me this. The doctor is in, Lisa. The doctor is in. So that's what's been going on with me. As far as personal stuff goes, still doing singing. Took a few days off to give my voice a rest. I'll get back to it tomorrow. And I'm actually going to be seeing my doctor about these test results on Thursday. I also have probably what's going to be my last sleep doctor session on Thursday as well. Even though I like her a lot. Her name is Janae. She's fantastic. She's really helped me. I cannot thank her enough. But I think that, I think I don't need to see her anymore. And that's kind of sad. In a way, it's kind of sad. It's so weird that I'll be honest with you. Back in January and February, I really had some fears that my sleep, I thought eventually my sleep would come back, but I thought it was going to be a long time. I had some deep, deep fears that it was going to be a while. So given that I've been sleeping pretty well over the past month, 6 weeks, and it's almost kind of back to normal, I of course, I'm doing all the work here, but certainly her name is Janae. She's not quite a doctor yet. She's going for a doctorate at like Harvard or something. Yeah. But she's been really, really good. I think I picked the right person to really help me out. And I would suggest anybody who has any sleep issues, go find a good sleep therapist that's based in CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. That's what I did. Fantastic. You got to do both, though. Got to do the CBTI, the program, and get a therapist that can walk you through it, because you're going to be miserable for. I mean, January, February, and into like the beginning of March, I was miserable. Miserable. Tell me, I don't know if it showed on this live show or anything. I was miserable. And that's why I thought, am I ever going to get over this? I guess I have. I guess it could come back at any time, but at least I have the tools to maybe fix it now. So, Lisa, take it from someone who's scared of dog after what happened when I was 17. Now I love most of the docs I'm seeing. Good. Yeah. All right. So that's what's going on with me. Did a half hour on it. Some people are like, stop talking about yourself, Ed. I do it because I really believe that being transparent, and I think that me talking about some of these things can help some of you. I'm not the only person out there who's ever had sleep issues or cholesterol issues or blood issues or going to the doctor issues and everything. And I think if that it can help a few people who hear this or are watching tonight, I think it's worth it. Not everything always has to be about disappearances and everything else. We have to take care of ourselves, both mentally and physically. And I'm certainly shown to be one of those people. When I have an issue, I go get help. And that's exactly what happened when my sleep issues started. Figured out what I needed to do, put the plan in place. And I know if I hadn't, I'd still not be sleeping well here in May. There's no doubt in my mind. Back in December, if I'd not found out about CBTI and then gone and searched and researched on sleep therapists and found a really, really good one, I'd still be in, I think, a very bad place. There's no doubt in my mind. Now, of course, it's not cheap, but trust me, when you're not sleeping well and everything, it's like, how much money do you want to get me back to sleeping well? Just tell me how much I need to pay and I'll do it. So it's because it's worth it. Lisa, absolutely love getting to know you. Thanks, Lisa. I like getting to know all of you. D, we all love our Ed. Thanks, D. Come on, he's known as Uncle Ed on my channel. Oh, yeah, Uncle Ed. Yes, thanks, D. All right, let's get into what I have on the menu for tonight for the next hour and a half. First of all, of course, there was no episode on Friday. I made a little recording, like 10 minutes long, explaining what's been going on. I'm going to continue to say I can't explain it. This year, it's been tougher to find people. Not finding people. It's easy to find people. There's websites and Facebook pages and everything else. These people are easy to find. It's getting them to respond is the toughest that it has ever been. Even tougher than when I started Unfound in 2016 when nobody knew who I was. Why that is, I'm not taking it personally. This is not a situation where there are people out there bad-mouthing the podcast or anything. That's not going on. Yeah, the podcast has some bad reviews, but every true crime podcast does. On top of that, even though there have been maybe a few guests who we've had falling outs after the fact, that certainly happened. I'm not going to lie about that. I think most of the guests who have been on Unfound, I think I could call most any of them up anytime I wanted, and they're talking. Of course, they can call me anytime. So I don't think it's any guests who are out there. There's just something going on, and it's a situation where people respond and they say, "I'm just not ready yet." Or somebody says, I'm ready to talk, and then they have some family emergency. Like I was supposed to interview somebody this Friday. The person's father died. It just feels like there's maybe a little bad luck going on. It's a lot of things put together. I think all of this is really out of my control because me reaching out to people is almost a daily thing, almost daily. And you would think, because I tell them who I am, I tell them about the podcast, I tell them how long I've been doing this and everything, and they can just find me anywhere. You'd think that would really, really, really increase the chances that they respond and we could have a good talk and have a good interview. It just hasn't worked that way. Now, granted, May is always a weird month anyway. It's the end of the school year. Of course, a lot of people that I'm talking to are parents or, their grandparents or something like that. And of course, with the end of the school year, everybody's patterns and things can, change. And, if you have a working family, then the kids maybe are getting, instead of, now the kids are going to be free. And so somebody has to watch them during the day while a parent is off at work. A lot of changing of schedules right now. It also doesn't help that May is when Mother's Day is, and the last thing you want to do is reach out to people around Mother's Day, given the topic. As you all know, mothers of missing adult children are the most common demographic of people, a person who gets interviewed for Unfound. So it makes it all very, very touchy. But this April and May has been unusually difficult. And I also can't rule out the idea that, I think because of the success of Unfound, that more and more people who have gotten into this are kind of doing, saying, well, if he can interview people, I can interview people. And so I'm guessing that here in 2025, there are just more people reaching out to families than there were in 2016. And I wouldn't doubt that a lot of these people, especially if they have Facebook pages, they're high profile, not necessarily high profile disappearances, but these people are easy to find because they have a Facebook page or something like that. They probably get inundated with messages. And so, yes, I'm messaging them, but it may be 10 other people and maybe, YouTube channels and, the ID channel and whoever else also messaging them. And maybe it just gets a little overwhelming and they just want to block it all out. I'm certainly open to that too. Once again, out of my hands, out of my control. But it does bother me. And I hate missing Fridays. And I've only missed a few Fridays over the past almost 9 years. And I take great pride in that. But I would have never thought all this time into doing the podcast that finding people would be more difficult now than it was in year one. There's a lot of things that I couldn't have predicted regarding disappearances and everything and learning about them. This is just as surprising as a lot of that, maybe even more so. Like I said, that's why the title of the what I said on Friday was ... not for a lack of trying. It's certainly not just sitting here at home and doing nothing. That's certainly I've been getting out and going to the gym and playing disc golf and singing and going to all the things that I regularly do. But when it comes to working on the podcast, it's just the same as ever. So I'm not sure that there's necessarily an easy fix. Now, it very well may be a week from now. I got, people contacted me and I have 5 people lined up to talk to. It very well may be. But the past 6 weeks to, going back to the beginning of April have been really, really weird in that department for reaching out to people. Lisa says, being a single mom, May is a crazy, crazy time. Yeah. Oh, everything's in here. Where is everything? Hello, everything. How are you? Well, Ed, me and Lighting are working on some for you. I appreciate it, D. I'll talk to whoever you send to me. I appreciate it. I appreciate you and Lighting doing that. Stephanie, yes, it is Monday, Stephanie. Good to see you. So there you go. We're going into the summer of 2025, and I don't have anything lined up for Friday. We're going to have an episode on Friday, but I have no interviews planned this week. And it should be known, I've run into probably more flakes this year than I ever have in the preceding years as well. People say they're going to talk, and they don't. People who say, yeah, call me now, and they don't pick up the phone. That has happened this year more than ever for whatever reason. And I've even had a couple people who I thought I got along pretty well with. And then when I asked them follow-up questions, they say, you ask too much questions. I'm not talking to you anymore. That happened. My assistants will vouch for that. That happened. Hard to understand. Hard to understand. So that's what's been going on. I'll let you know. Of course, if those things change, all of you will be the first to know after me. But still working my butt off, reaching out to people, trying to figure out what can be done. And by the way, this is happening to my assistant, Emily, who continues to reach out to people. She had a couple of people scheduled to talk to last week. Flaked. I don't know. Anybody who has any insightful answers into any of that, feel free to put, to post a comment in the chat. I'm open to all suggestions. All right, let's get into the topics for tonight. By the way, as you are watching tonight, please give this video a thumbs up. You know what to do, whether on your phone, on your computer, on your tablet. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. Consider becoming a Patreon member at patreon.com/Unfound podcast. Sign up there. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can hit the join button below. There's a lot of different ways that you can support what we do here. Crypto violence. Let me read this story to you. A cryptocurrency investor has been charged after police claim he kidnapped and tortured an Italian tourist for more than 2 weeks in New York City. John Woltz, Woltz, 37 years old, was arrested on Friday, May 23rd, per a statement from the New York NYPD. After the tourist, 28, escaped from an upscale New York City apartment that morning and told an on-duty traffic agent that he had been held against his will since May 6th, so for 2 weeks. The male tourist further stated that he had been routinely assaulted during this captivity. The victim was transported to NYC Health and Hospitals in stable condition. On Saturday, May 24th, Woltz was charged with 2 counts of second-degree assault and 1 charge each of kidnapping, imprisonment, and criminal possession of a firearm. The AP reported that the victim was held captive for not giving up his Bitcoin password. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office told the outlet that Woltz is being held without bail. People, where I got this article, People magazine reached out to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and Woltz lawyer Wayne Gosnell for comment and additional information on May 25th, but had not heard back. Beatrice Folchi, Folchi, 24, was also taken into custody in relation to the crime on May 24th and faces 1 count each of first-degree kidnapping and first-degree unlawful imprisonment. However, the New York Post reported that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office declined to prosecute Folchi pending further investigation. Folchi worked as Woltz's assistant, police sources told the Post. So the victim told police, here's more on the story. The victim told police he arrived in the U.S. from Italy on May 6th and went to Woltz's rented home. The victim said he and Woltz had previously done business together. The relationship soured after dispute, and the victim went back to Italy. But Woltz allegedly convinced him to return to Manhattan, where he was held against his will. The victim told police that Woltz allegedly took the victim's passport and tortured him. The outlet also stated that police found Polaroid pictures of the victim tied up and being tortured. Police reportedly recovered a gun and several torture devices. I think the reason that you don't run into many stories about people being held against their will and being tortured for 2 weeks in American media. We know it happens. Of course, we know Ariel Castro in Cleveland with the 3 women that he held for years and everything. And I think that they, of course, were harmed and everything. I don't know if they were being tortured the whole time. Of course, imprisonment in itself is, in that way, is torture, mental torture. But for something like this, it happens, but it's not too often, especially when we start thinking about New York City and that. Although, you may be, asking me, maybe the question you're asking me in your head is, do you think of any of Unfound's disappearances like this, where somebody was taken and then kidnapped? Well, we kind of know that Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman, very sadly, it seemed they were assaulted and everything before they were murdered. Of course, their bodies are still missing. People still looking for them, including Laura's family. We know that Ashley's parents were murdered when the disappearances occurred, the abductions occurred. So we know about that. Am I open to the idea that some of these many of the we have many of Unfound's unsolved disappearances? Am I open to the idea that at least one or two or three or five of those still unresolved disappearances involved somebody being tortured for a while before being killed? I guess I'm open to that idea. I could maybe go through the list and pick out ones. I don't know if I'd really want to get into, making my list public or anything. You can do that for yourselves. Maybe, all the disappearances that Unfound is featured. You could do that for yourself. I just don't think that this is something that is very, very common. This seems to be my impression is that when things like this happen, it ends up just being a straight out murder where somebody is held against his or her will. They're tortured, assaulted, and everything, and then the body's left somewhere, maybe in their own house where this all happened, or out in the woods or something like this. I don't know how many of these end up becoming disappearances, the way we define them on Unfound, that the person's just not around. Of course, we believe that many of Unfound's disappearances are murders. I just don't know how many of those people were tortured like we're talking about here in this article. I don't know. Now, on top of that, though, and I'm not a licensed financial advisor or anything. I know a little bit about money. I have some investments myself, and I get along with the people who are responsible for my investments really, really well. I think I'm in very, very good hands, reputable places that have been around for a long, 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 long time. And these people have been doing their work for a very, very long time. But to all of you, I have to admit something, that this particular, torture incident, that it's connected to cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and everything else, does not surprise me at all. Does not surprise me at all. Now, I realize I'm a Generation Xer and I'm in my 50s. And my impression when it comes to crypto and Bitcoin, everything, that's kind of like the generation after me, the millennials, who were born between like 1980 and 95 or whatever else. I think you should stay away from all of it. I've never really made, in any one particular year, I've never really made a lot of money in my life just because of my personal pursuits and things, and staying away from regular jobs and not being interested in climbing the corporate ladder and everything. But the thing is, the way I've been able to do that for so long is I'm pretty good with money. And I can live pretty normally and frugally, as I did for many, 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 many years, because I wasn't making a lot of money and everything. So I'm pretty good with money, and I will tell you, stay away from this stuff. I think I'm convinced that it's all funny money. I know that like on CNBC, they talk about it and they keep track of what Bitcoin and all these things. I think it's a complete boondoggle. And this kind of stuff connected to it doesn't surprise me at all. Whereas on the other hand, when was the last time you heard somebody getting tortured and everything because somebody was trying to get hands on somebody's 401k? Or on their real, mutual fund investments and things like that. I'm not saying it's never happened, but there's just all of this shenanigans and, people doing stuff, stealing people's money and breaking in and taking the Bitcoin and doing this and doing that. It just sounds like some get rich quick scheme. And we know how those things work. They don't. They don't. And for any of you who are in an investing mood and everything else, if anybody who you're taking advice from ever tells you, well, I think you need to get into crypto or Bitcoin, run the other way. Run away as fast as you can. I'm not saying that if you do that, you're going to end up getting tortured or anything. But I read the story and I'm just not surprised it's connected to that at all. So, yeah. So I'm glad this person got caught. I'm glad that the victim, who I guess is an Italian, lived, and I guess his physical wounds will eventually heal. The mental wounds, I don't know if those will ever heal. It is something to me. He says he was tortured for 2 weeks, never gave up the password. I guess this Waltz guy mustn't have been that good of a torturer or something. I don't know how I'm supposed to define that. But what I get out of this is stay away from this stuff. You stick to sound investments and mutual funds and municipal bonds and things. You're never going to have anybody come into your house torturing you to get their hands on it. Pretty sure. Pretty sure. And Lisa, you're right. I am awesome. And thank you, Lisa. You are very generous. Lisa also says, responding why people back out of doing podcasts, sample size of 1, but I asked my cousin to contact you about a loved one missing, but in the end, it's just too painful. I get it. I mean, I realize, Lisa, that not everybody's up to it. Certainly. And I don't blame anybody for not wanting to talk about something that pains them, certainly. But on the other hand, all of us, you don't have to be doing this job that I do. You can be on that side of the microphone and where all of you are, and know how many families out there are saying, we never get attention for our disappearances. We don't get attention. Nobody ever comes to us. We have to go to the media. It goes by the anniversary. Nobody contacts us. We hear that way more than the people who say, I don't want to talk about it because it's too painful. We hear way more about people who want more attention, more media coverage and everything else. And, I even had something, once again, perplexing to me. I reached out, of course, I never use any names in any of these things because I think that would be wrong. But I reached out to the daughter of a woman who went missing. And she got back to me fairly quickly saying, man, my mother's disappearance really needs some media attention. Really does. Yeah, happy to talk to you. We talked, had a great conversation, did the interview outline, sent it to her. She gets back to me and says, no, I've decided it's too dangerous. I don't want to do it. It's too dangerous for my family, and that's that. It just, I'm not, now, is it actually, in me knowing about the disappearance, like I said, I'm not going to tell you what disappearance it is. It doesn't seem that dangerous to me. But what's always interesting, what's really surprising to me is I am a stranger to all of these people. I don't know any of these missing people. I don't know any of the guests before they appear. And really, I haven't met most of them in person. And here I am, a stranger working for free for them. And I've gotten some threats too. And that doesn't intimidate me at all. I guess I'm putting my life on the line for strangers as a reporter, and I'm easy to find. It's not like I'm living in a castle with a moat of alligators around it. And I don't mind doing this and being in danger and everything. And I don't even know these people. But then the family members say, nah, it's just not worth it. It's hard for me to understand that. Especially when they say, well, we want really, what are you doing? I don't get it. I'm a stranger who's willing to put myself out there. I've gotten some nasty emails and everything else, and that doesn't stop me at all. These people, they don't get any threats at all, and they just say, well, I'm too scared to do it. Now, I realize they're kind of in the area, and I'm here in Clearwater Beach, Florida. It's really, that happened this year. And that's happened before, but that's the most recent case, and that's the one that's on my mind. As a stranger, willing to put, my life on the line. I'm out there going to trivia and all these, I don't know. And these loved ones, they say they miss them and everything, but they want media attention, but I guess they don't want it that bad. It's frustrating. It's really, really frustrating. If I had a family member go missing and, some podcaster who was quality wanted to do and was willing to do it for free and knew there was danger involved and everything else, I would respect the heck out of that person. But that is not what happens a lot of times. D says to me, I know what you're saying there, D. I'm not going to read that, but I'm not going to delete it, but I'm not going to read it either. D-O-Ed, next time you see Cash, I don't know what that means. You see Cash, the him, congrats. I don't know what that, wish him congratulations on something. Why would I do that? What happened, D? You're going to have to tell me. All right, moving on. I really, 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 really want to talk about this book that I read. It's right over here on, in fact, I'll show you the cover of it. Hold on. This is the book. I got it off of Amazon. I think it was $15. It's paperback. There's no like audiobook or ebook available. It's only in print. And it's, as you can see, it's called This Night Wounds Time, the Mysterious Disappearances of Stacey Madison and Susan Smalley. Really good book. And it's written by, there you can see his name, Sean Sutherland. He's not paying me to market this. I didn't even tell him I was going to do this. But it's a good book. Gotten to know him a little bit. Good guy. And he wrote this book. He got involved. He's from Carrollton, Texas, where these disappearances occurred. And in fact, coincidentally, he ran into one of these girls not long before she went missing. They went missing together. And I'm not going to get into, like, I gave this guy my, and talking to him in Messenger, I told him that anything we talk about would be private. And his insights, not going to get into that. Just going to give you my insights from reading the book. If you want to get it, like I said, it's on Amazon. That's a free plug for his book if you feel like reading it. It's a fairly quick read. You can see it's not that thick. And it's has to do with their disappearances, but kind of also gives you a feel for that time. They disappeared in the late 80s. They were about my age that time, 17, 18 years old. I turned 18 in 1988. So it really spoke to me, I guess, from that point of view. But just to give you, you got that case off trivia for me. I did, D. You're right. I did get that from you. I took an interest in it. I thought that maybe the only thing is this guy has made it clear. This guy's named Sean Sutherland is the author. He doesn't want to come on the podcast. He doesn't want to do any. So totally up to him. But I would love to have him on. Maybe if I talk to him, maybe one of the family members. I suppose we could still cover their disappearances in a different way. But he doesn't want to come on. Once again, no judgment there. Fine by me. But I just want to give you some of my insights. These are two girls who were friends who went missing back in 1988. It was what was it, in May? It was around spring break time, or was it March? I forget the date. I didn't write it down in my notes. But they were out. They were driving around. They had gone down to Arlington to meet some guys, and then they came back. And the last time they were seen is that they had stopped. It was late. It must have been around midnight or 12:30, something like that. They stopped in where Susan worked. It was a steak and ale. And that's the last time they were ever seen. The next thing everybody knows, it was Stacy's car. She's driving an old Mustang, like from the 60s. It was found parked and locked in a parking lot right around where they were cruising around, and they were never seen again. And the car really did not reveal any clues. There was no signs of violence. Like I said, it was locked. Their purses that they were carrying were not inside. There was some bag or something that was in the car, but the items that they usually carried with for each other were gone. The keys are gone, and of course, as you will not be surprised, the car, nothing was ever done with it. There were no fingerprints, and the Carrollton Police Department does admit that they, really blew the work that should have been done. Why did they blow it? Well, they were just thinking, well, these girls are going to come back. They went off somewhere. It was a spring break, and they met some guys. They went away for a couple days. They'll be back. Of course, they didn't come back. Now, they might have gone on with a couple days, and of course, their disappearances are up to interpretation. But this is one more of those disappearances where the police jumped to the wrong conclusion because they started filling in the blanks with the wrong information. They started making logical leaps that weren't very logical. And it's a real stumper. It's a real stumper of a disappearance. Now, I think I can tell you this, is that in talking to Sean, once again, and he did admit that, of course, this book came out in 2009. There have been some things, maybe a change in the timeline here and there. And so the book's 16 years old, and some of the information in it has been changed since then. No criticism toward him. I think it's still, really good accounting, I think, of their disappearances. But I did tell him that, at least in my world, this is a very solvable disappearance. I just sent him that message a few days ago. I think that, of course, the disappearance is 37 years old. It's gone through 6 or 7 investigators, and Sean did a great job at tracking some of the investigators who did work at it, who may be retired, and talking to them, and that's included in the book. And I think he did a great job on that. He interviewed quite a few people for this book and did a good job with it. But in my world, as I told him, if this were to become an Unfound Disappearance featured on the podcast where we go through everything, it would probably be in the top 25 percent of the most solvable disappearances that Unfound would cover. Why do I say that? Well, at least with Stacy and Susan, and of course we always hold out hope that these people are still alive. But at least with them, we know foul play almost certainly happened. Now, we may not, of course, we don't know who did it, or maybe a group did it or something, but at least you can look in a particular direction. These girls did not run off and join the circus. They did not get swept off their feet by a couple billionaires riding around Carrollton, Texas, and have changed their names and have lived a life of luxury, cruising the world's oceans or anything. That did not happen. Okay, unfortunately. Something happened with them that they ran into the wrong guy or guys that night. Seemed to be good girls. Now, granted, on the night where this was happening, they did do some sneaking around, staying out late, pretending to be over at Susan's house when they really weren't, and her mother wasn't there, and so they went home and just stayed there real quickly and then left again. They're teenagers. That's what teenagers do. I'm not going to judge them that way, but it's also obvious, even though they were very underage, that they were looking to buy alcohol that night. They were trying to find somebody who would buy alcohol for them that night. And at least the last thing anybody knows is they didn't find anybody. There's no allegations that, Stacy, who was driving around drinking and driving. There are no allegations like that. No beer bottles or anything like that were found in her car. But they were just doing things that I never did this, but, in many ways, in that kind of vein, I did other things I shouldn't have been doing. But when it came to searching out people to buy beer because I was underage, that was just not part of my actions as a underage person. That just did not happen. Just wasn't into it. Like I said, I feel the same way about it now as I did back then. I'm just not into it. Alcohol, just not into it. Just never into it. I did a little drinking in college, a little bit after college, never been drunk, never had a buzz. One beer was good for me, and I was just like, what am I doing? Why do I do this? This is so stupid. And I quit. That's it. Just was not very important to me. Whereas, growing up in Leechburg, Pennsylvania, there's not a lot to do, and a lot of kids got into that, much to their detriment, I would say. But they were out there doing this, which a lot of teenagers do, and it just doesn't seem like they were successful. Now, what's hard to put together is, the car was found in a parking lot that, not that people hung out there, but it was right along this strip where, teenagers always cruised around. Nobody saw them park there. Nobody saw them get into another car. And in fact, there's not even any proof that Stacy was the one who parked her car there. I guess we have to be open to the idea that somebody else put the car there. There's no proof. There's no evidence to dispute that. There's no facts to dispute that. But as I told, and like I said, this is, I think once again, I'm not going to say, any of the conversations Sean and I had, but I, once again, being that I read the book, I can have my opinion on the book, is that with Sean, I went through my extensive experience of, working on disappearances for the last almost 9 years, and I have to believe that Stacy and Susan just ran into somebody who they knew that harmed them. The odds are overwhelming that it's that. Now, you should know Stacy did have a guy in her life who was a suspect. I think he continues to be a suspect here in 2025. The problem is that he has an alibi for that night that's never been broken. He seemingly didn't even have a car that night. He was working that night. Allegedly, she was supposed to pick him up at his work, and she didn't do that because I just don't think she wanted to be around him anymore. She was moving on to other things, other guys. And certainly there could have been a bitterness on his part that she didn't come pick me up. I'm going to track her down. Certainly possible. No proof of that. And the way I understand it, all of it, is fairly complex. And I think one of the things that we've learned about disappearances, the ones that have been solved, and we have over 30 of them in Unfound's catalog, they're fairly straightforward. Have we been surprised? Yeah. Esther Westenbarger found in a pond like a half mile from her house. That was surprising. But not as surprising if she would have been found in a pond in her Cadillac in California, in contrast to where she went missing in Kokomo, Indiana. Daniel Villarreal, certainly surprising that he was found in somebody's pool house deceased, but not surprised that he was dead. That wasn't surprising. It was just surprising where he was eventually found. Somebody, you just wouldn't suspect it. When we think about Caleb Davis, this young man who went missing in Texas and ended up being found in the sewer, like down in that manhole. Certainly surprising he was there, but I don't know how many people were really surprised that he was deceased. So when these cases are resolved, maybe if we want to talk about Mary Jane Van Gilder. I wasn't that surprised. I mean, I was, I made the prediction she did walk off. I didn't believe she was murdered or anything. I'll admit I was a little surprised that she ended up having a whole new life with a new guy and had new kids. That surprised me, but it didn't surprise me that she lived long after 1945. That was not a surprise to me. So, for the most part, these disappearances, when they're solved, are really, 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 really within what we might call the meaty part of that bell curve. And so for Stacy and Susan's, I kind of feel like the same thing. You have to go in that direction, even though it doesn't seem that the guy who was in Stacy's life could have run into them that night. How did he do that without anybody noticing that? How did he do that? Of course, this is time before cell phones and the internet. How exactly did he do that? It's hard to understand. It's not impossible. It's certainly physically possible. It doesn't defy any of the laws of physics or anything that he could have done that. He wouldn't have to have traveled faster than the speed of light or anything. But still, the way we understand life and everything, it seems somewhat improbable. And he has been questioned. He was given a lie detector test. I think that he passed. He's maintained his innocence, even though allegedly he vented to one of his next girlfriends that he did something to Stacy, but they followed up on what he said. There was nothing there. It seems that, as many guys do, as we've learned, that something happens and they start telling stories because they didn't do anything, but they'll tell some woman in their life that they did to get that woman to behave, and to control her. Very common. So, but I still believe that Stacy and Susan ran into a guy or guys that they knew and something happened. You have to understand, two people going at missing at one time is rare, even though we know about Colt Colt and Molly. We know about, of course, some couples that we've covered. Of course, we have a father and son, Chance and Dub Wackerhagen, who went missing. Joyce Rivatuzo's daughters. We've covered some disappearances where more than one person went missing at a time, adults. But it's once again fairly rare. And I think in all of those, I even went back and looked at those. You got to believe foul play in almost all of them. But who are the suspects, the best suspects in those disappearances when adults go missing together? It's usually people they know. It's not some stranger on stranger, type of situation. So but hey, there's a reason it's been unsolved. I also think that if the guy, and I don't want to mention his name is mentioned in the book. In fact, he changed his name, and I'm not getting into that either. I just think if he did it, it would have been solved very quickly. The police, even though they didn't do a very good job in the investigation, they were on to him fairly quickly and gave him somewhat of a hard time. And, he took a polygraph and passed it. Polygraph's just a tool. They're not perfect. It's not science. That he was interrogated. He was questioned. He never asked for a lawyer. He said it didn't have anything to do with it. He just seems like the type of guy that he would have cracked under the pressure. He didn't. And that also sticks out to me. And I also would say that the odds of them running into, a stranger and that person just happening to be violent or something seems somewhat unlikely to me, although that might have happened in Brandy Wells's disappearance, coincidentally also in Texas. That possibly could have happened, but the difference is Brandy was by herself. These two girls were together. That the car was so neatly parked, it very well could be that whoever caused their disappearance put it there, but why put it in such an obvious place? We know how killers like to ditch cars, and you're taking a big risk parking it somewhere that it's going to get found so quickly, especially being that's like a 1960s some Mustang that's going to really stick out, even of course, in the 1980s, 20 years after it was made. And would a killer allow Stacy to just park that car right there where it was going to be found easy? I guess. Lots and lots of things to ponder. But I continue to come back to the idea that this was somebody whoever did this knew both of them. And I'm guessing a really good guess, I think, on my part would be that this actually is somebody who maybe police talked to, and the person went right through the interrogation process, no problem. Probably somebody older. Remember, they were looking for alcohol. This would tend to me, I would tend to believe that this person is 21 or over. Somebody who knew them, who found out they were looking for alcohol, and he goes, well, I can help you out. And of course, we also know with these missing persons disappearances, at least my best guess is that, most of these disappearances that end up being murders, they're not planned. It's not this sophisticated plan. Of course, we had some that were alluring, like Tyler North, but most of them are not like that. They are crimes of passion, heat of the moment, domestic violence episode that goes that one step further. where, a woman gets her arm broken and the guy then knows that, he's going to be going to jail. So he just decides to go the whole way with it. And so for Stacy and Susan, it very well could be a situation that this guy thought because he bought them alcohol that he could just do anything he wanted for them. They resist. Then he's afraid that, they're going to go to the cops and he's going to get charged with rape or attempted rape. And he doesn't want to do it. Maybe he already has a criminal record for other things along those lines. This is my insight into all of this. To think that they just happened to run into the wrong, and we have to remember Carrollton, Texas, in this area where they were, it's all locals. And mainly that it's all a bunch of teenagers cruising around, early 20-somethings cruising around, illegally drag racing, playing loud music, like they used to do back in the 1980s before kids started caring more about their computers and their cars. But still, you should check it out. I'd love to get more into it. I'd love to talk to Stacy's and Susan's families. Like I said, Sean, the author, has already stated he's not really into that. Fine by me. But maybe we will get a chance to get even deeper into the details on a future episode of Unfound. Certainly love, to talk to both families, just like I did with Keith Call and Sandra Haley. The disappearance connected to the Colonial Parkway murders, if we're going to continue to call them that. And, I thought that both of those families did a really good job, and, me splicing that all together, I'd like to do that again. There might be some things that, as I will continue to say, that what I bring to the table regarding disappearances is just an overall view of what goes on with disappearances, mainly in the United States. I'm not an expert on any one particular disappearance, not even Tom Brown's. Maybe not even on Janelle Matthews, even though I testified in a trial. I see my job is understanding the overall view of the entire thing and seeing the trends and patterns, keeping track of the disappearances that I know about that get solved. Why do they get solved? Who did it? Was it a suicide or whatever else? And trying to apply that to disappearances like Stacy's and Susan's. And that is something that most people do not have the capacity to do because they don't do this as a job. Instead, what we have a lot of experts on disappearances. Sean Sutherland, the author of this book, is an expert on Stacy's and Susan's disappearance. That's who he is. Fantastic. John Polos is an expert on Julie Weflin's disappearance. Kelly Bruce Kokenauer, I hope I said that right this time, is an expert on Brian Schaefer's disappearance. And those people are certainly needed too. Certainly. And we have a lot. And the thing is, my impression, we have a lot of experts on particular disappearances. Amateurs and even some investigators. Adam Turner became an expert on Mary Jane Van Gilder's disappearance. We have a lot of experts on one or two disappearances. What we lack in the United States are people who have a good overview of the entire picture of what is actually going on. And not to brag, but I think of one of very, very, very few people. And so when I'm talking to Sean, that's what I'm trying to bring. When I tell him that, I still think this is very solvable. I told him, you just, I can tell my conversation. I'm not going to tell you what we talk about, insights and other things, what he had to say and everything. But what I told him is that You have to remember something. The disappearances that get featured on Unfound, a lot of them, you don't even know what to think. Could it be murder? Could be a walk-off, could be a suicide, could have gone. A lot of the disappearance, there's like 3 or 4 choices. At least the advantage you have with Stacy and Susan's, at least it's a murder. Let's just call it what it is. That alone makes it right up into the 25% of the most solvable disappearances that I know about and know well. And we just don't have enough of those people. And because the thing is, that's a lot harder to do, to get to a point where a lot of disappearances and can call them off, 100, 200, 300, or rattle around in your brain. It takes a while to do that. Whereas becoming an expert on one disappearance doesn't take that long. Maybe you buy a book, like Kelly Bruce has done. She's talked to a lot of different people and, has been working on a long time. But, there are certainly many disappearances where it maybe doesn't take as much work. You can go to Web Sleuths. You can go to Charlie Project. You can contact the family. Maybe there's a book that's been written or maybe a podcast that's devoted to that one disappearance and nothing else. And you probably know everything there is to know publicly. And you can do that maybe in a few weeks or a month or a couple months or something like that. Whereas to learn a lot about a lot of disappearances takes quite a while, and then be able to apply that, not to brag, but there just aren't many people who are into that and have that kind of patience and everything. And I think also what that helps is that it stops me from becoming obsessive on any particular disappearance. Because like I've said, I will say this, for example, about John Poulos. I love it that John Poulos, has devoted much of his life since the 1980s trying to figure out what happened to Julie Weflin. We need more people like John Poulos. Even though I think he's on the wrong track regarding trying to figure out what happened to Julie, my opinion. But what I would also say about John, as much as I like him and just texted back and forth with him about a month ago, is that when you're only working on one disappearance, it can become obsessive. And what can happen? I've seen it with many people who I've talked to, over the last almost 9 years. They get so obsessed on something that start blocking things out, start, ignoring facts that might take them in a different direction. Can't see the forest for the trees. When you're only obsessing on one disappearance, of course, anything that you encounter is like, oh, this is like the most special thing ever. Well, you come to me and I'd be like, no, I know 100 disappearances that have that. It's like what, when you have insomnia. Once again, I did a lot of reading about insomnia, of course, when I first started experiencing it. And what a lot of sleep therapists say is the first time they encounter somebody, try to help somebody, the person who is experiencing the insomnia will tell the person, this insomnia is like nobody else's. My insomnia is so unique. Nobody else has sleep problems like I do. And then the sleep therapist turns around and says, no, I've talked to 100 people that have the exact same thing you do. Why? Because the sleep therapist is the person who sees the overall picture, because that person's talked to 100 people who have sleep problems. So at some point, nothing is surprising. But because that one person suddenly has insomnia and they've never experienced all this before, they think it's unique. It's not. And in fact, it's very common, and there are fixes probably for all of it. This is very common. Again. And this is kind of the way I see disappearances for people who get so involved in one. They think it's so unique. There's not another disappearance like it. It's never going to be solved and everything. And these people are very well-meaning people, and they're working very hard and everything. The problem is, because they don't know a lot about a lot of disappearances, it's hard. It's hard for them to know as much as they need to know, and to keep everything in perspective. Everything's such a surprise. No, it's very common. It's very common. So when I look at, once again, going back to Stacy's and Susan's disappearance, certainly two, although one of them was not technically 18, but I mean, two adults going missing together is rare. But there's nothing that I see in this disappearance that makes it unusual and causes me to think that this is really, really out there in the very thin edges of the bell curve. There's nothing that I see here. I'm going to continue to stick, but I urge you to get the book. Once again, it's called This Night Wounds Time. It's by Sean Sutherland, who's from the area, has good experience living in the area. I think that helped in writing the book. But I still think this is solvable. And what I usually say at this point, if this were a family that I were talking to, had been interviewed, and they would ask me, what do you think we got to do, Ed? The police have talked to all these people, and there's been a polygraph given and everything else. They didn't do the fingerprints on the car and everything else. What's there to do? My thing is, I'd go back to the beginning. I'd start at square one and do it all over again. I mean, the police aren't going to do that, so you're going to have to do it. There's nothing wrong with getting wrong with getting back to basics. Because like I said, my impression is that the overall belief is that the police, I wouldn't say bungled the investigation, but they didn't do some things they should have. But that's common. That's happening. All that happens to this day. Very, 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 very common. But once again, if you only know one disappearance, then it seems like they blew this, and it's happening all the time. I'm not saying I'm for it, but what they did with Stacy and Susan's disappearance isn't anything different than what I've read in 100 different other disappearances. And those things have been overcome, and some of those disappearances got solved. These things can be overcome. But I would say you go back to the beginning. You forget everything you know, and you start over after 37 years. That sucks. It sucks, but I think that's what you have to do. You have to forget everything that you know. Because why? Because everything you know hasn't gone anywhere. Even though we know that these two girls were murdered. Hasn't gone anywhere. So, of course, there are a lot of disadvantages for a disappearance being 37 years old. Several. People's memories, of course, fade away. People die. People move away. People get tired of being asked the same questions over and over and over again. Even people who have nothing to do with disappearance, but a witness or friends, they get tired of being asked the same questions and over and over and over. But on the other hand, 37 years can give us all some perspective. For example, what if we were to look at the 10 closest men around these two girls and find out what those guys have done with their lives over the last 37 years? Has anybody done that? Has anybody kept tabs on these guys? What if we were to find out at least one of them has a sexual assault in the early 90s? What if we were to find that out? Things like that. Because that would not, of course, be known because the guy hadn't committed any other crimes yet. So time can give us perspective. In addition, of course, people who might not have wanted to talk in 1988 for whatever reason, maybe as a teenager or something, as an adult, maybe they're just begging to be questioned and just they don't have the courage to step forward and say something. But somebody has to track that person down after all these years. So I'm still hopeful. Hey, if Mary Jane Van Gilder's disappearance can be solved after, was it 75 years? Wait, 55 and 20? 75 over 75 years later, then of course Stacy's and Susan's can. Of course. Of course. Andra Bowman went missing the next year. Of course, she was murdered. Solved. Solved. But if somebody's going to work on it, got to start at the beginning. I just don't have a lot of confidence that the police did the right things back then, as I would say that about right now. So it's an interesting one. Maybe I wanted to talk about it because I read the book, got to talk to the author, good guy, good writer. Like I said, though, it doesn't want to appear on the podcast. He's like the first author that I've known that doesn't want to come on to market his book. Fine by me. It's his book, his life. But maybe I could talk to him. Maybe he'll talk to their families. Maybe they want to be interviewed one-on-one. Maybe they would, at the very least, like some of my insight into all of it. D says, well, I know a lot about the Wells case. You certainly do, D. Love your trip, D. Thank you. They're talking about D's trivia night. And yes, we will be doing that again this Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So everybody can tune in for that. Neighborly says we should all do a live stream book discussion. Well, everybody would have to read the same book, Neighborly, right? That's how it would work, right? Okay. I was going to say, y'all, that kid's crazy. I don't know who you're talking about, D. All right, let's move on to this. The title of this Ohio-based true crime podcaster, the title I gave this is "This Doesn't Help" when it comes to the attitude that people have toward true crime podcasting. An Ohio-based true crime podcaster was found guilty of intimidating city officials in a Facebook post she wrote in 2023. Ashley Ford, 40, was convicted of 4 of the counts against her on Thursday after going on trial for a total of 19 charges, 16 of which were felonies. According to the court documents obtained by local CBS outlet, Ford was found guilty of 4 intimidation charges and acquitted of the others, which included extortion, telecommunications fraud, and misdemeanor falsification. Ford, who is the host of the allegedly true crime podcast, was indicted in March 2024 after a September 2023 Facebook post in which she named several city officials in Norwalk, Ohio, been there, and made a number of allegations against them. The Facebook post in question, published on September 22nd of 2023, specifically named Norwalk Mayor David Light, Law Director and Prosecutor Stuart O'Hara, Safety and Service Director Michael White, and former Norwalk Police Chief David Smith, and accused them of allegedly corrupt acts. All of them were witnesses for the prosecution during the trial. Along with her accusations, Ford wrote a series of threats against the city officials, including, "I know that I have you on your knees," quote unquote, and quote unquote, "This is your very last opportunity to end this in a respectable manner." Ford went on to write, "I will slowly crumble the reputation of every single person who stands in the way of justice. I will escort you to your demise in a manner more akin to Malcolm X than Martin Luther King Jr." In her post, the screenshot of which was obtained by WTOL from the Erie County Clerk of Courts, Ford claimed that she would expose every single low-down dirty deed, including misspent fines, obscene photos, quote-unquote, shut-up settlements, quote-unquote, human trafficking drug ring, quote-unquote, suicides that ain't suicides, and more. WTOL reported that when Ford published the post, she was already facing 2 criminal falsification charges in connection to accusations she had allegedly made against the Norwalk Police Department. She was ultimately acquitted on those charges. Ford is due back in court for sentencing on June 16th and faces 9 to 16 months in prison, plus a fine of up to $10,000 for each of the 4 counts. In Facebook post following the verdict, Ford wrote to her audience, "Your support means everything to me. I'm okay. God built me to withstand storms like this. I continue to walk in faith and without an ounce of fear. The actions throughout my life will always defend me. I don't know what that means. Like I said, this does not help the true crime community. This does not help my profession of, are you leaving us? Hello, Jill. Jill, good night. Lisa's leaving us. Wow. All right, Lisa. Fine. Thank you for being very generous with the super chat button tonight, Lisa. Thank you so very much, and I hope you sleep well. Beginning back to Ashley Ford, I'd never heard of her. I've never heard of this podcast. Maybe some of you have. Many of you are much more in touch with this type of stuff than I am. But this kind of stuff does not help the true crime podcasting community. In fact, there's a lot that doesn't help the true crime podcasting community. As I stated before, as I stated at the beginning tonight, what I was going to get into, as I have before, I have a big problem with media in the United States. If you ever see any polling on people's opinions, disapproval, approval of reporting the press in the United States, it is always one of the lowest rated professions. Always. This doesn't help. This doesn't help. And the issue is, I know this is fairly controversial. Of course, in the United States, we have freedom of the press, and that goes hand in hand with freedom of speech. That here in the United States, all of us, whether we consider ourselves to be reporters or not, have a lot more leeway on what can be said than they do in any other country in the world. For example, for all us Americans, and we go to Canada. Canada, they don't have freedom of speech in Canada. Now, I'm not saying that people don't speak out against their government in Canada. I'm not saying that they don't have reporters in Canada or anything, good reporters in Canada or people trying to do good jobs or anything like that. But they don't have freedom of speech in Canada. They don't have a Bill of Rights like we do in the United States. They don't. And when it comes just to, what you can say about the government, there are restrictions on that in Canada, much more stringent than you would ever find here in the United States. Even though I think the average American who goes to Canada, the only big difference they notice is everything's in, kilometers and liters instead of miles and gallons. That's it. But if you lived there long enough and you got involved in stuff and started speaking out, I think, and as an American being up there, you would find real quick, this ain't the United States. And you could say that for other countries that I think in general are seen as being kind of like the United States, whether it's Australia or England or France, Western culture, what we might term very loosely, although technically Australia would not be part of that. But none of those countries have what we have. That's what makes the United States Bill of Rights so unique. So unique. The problem, though, is this, and I'm not necessarily speaking out against the Bill of Rights, but there is no way that when the founding fathers, whatever you think of them, them being slave owners and everything else, whatever you think of them, there is no way that they could have ever known that sometime down the road that any person anywhere in their own hut, in their own home, in their own horse and buggy or whatever else, in thinking in their terms, there's no way they could have ever suspected that any person could have access to millions and millions of people in a second. Of course, in their time, if you wanted to have access to just 100 people, you had to have a printing press and all that stuff. And in fact, that was the way it was for a couple hundred years until the internet came along. And suddenly everybody has access to everybody else. And I would say that this has not necessarily been for everybody's benefit. I know for me, I am one of those people. I couldn't, if this were not 20 years ago, but maybe 40 years ago, like when I would have been a ninth grader, 1985 in Lynchburg, Pennsylvania. Of course, this didn't exist. The internet didn't exist. These laptops didn't exist. The internet, nothing existed. None of this, what I'm using here to talk to all of you tonight, existed. I could have never, I don't know, probably a few people predicted that was going to happen in 1985. I was not one of them. But I don't think most people could have known that within the next 20 years that any one particular person could have access to everybody else and telling them bunches of things. I am still a believer. I know this is crazy to say in these times. I think that media in the United States was a lot better in the 1970s. And I say this as a person who uses every bit of 21st century technology to communicate with all of you. When there was like your local news that was like an hour long, and you had a newspaper that came out once a day, maybe there was like a morning edition and an evening edition, and then you had national news with Walter Cronkite for a half hour, and that was it. I think we were all better off back then. I really do. And as much as this is why I continue to say that if I weren't doing this and trying to help people with their missing persons cases and interview them and everything else, I wouldn't be doing any of this. I would not be doing some show on plane crashes, even though I'm trying to use this platform as a way to help people. And I don't know how many people are really doing that. I know that the idea back at the time was that, well, this, with the internet and anybody can, you can have your own platform and you have your own YouTube channel and all these things. This is really going to democratize media. Media won't be controlled so much by CBS and NBC and ABC and Fox News and CNN. No, people can just be their own reporters. It's going to be awesome. I would not say it's been awesome. I would not say it's been awesome. I use this, the indie filmmaking example that, when the first 3-chip cameras came out in the early 2000s, I was an independent filmmaker, and there was this belief out there, well, this is going to democratize filmmaking. Films are going to be made for a lot less money because you don't have to get film and you don't have to develop the film, and anybody can afford one of these cameras and anybody can go out and shoot anything at any time. It's going to democratize filmmaking. What really happened? What really happened is there just ended up being more bad movies. That's what happened. That's what happened. And when I say it, it's kind of funny because I was part of that. I made a couple certainly bad movies back then, so I know all about it. I can be very, I can be very honest with all of you regarding that. The movies didn't get better. It didn't democratize filmmaking. It just made more bad movies. And I think what is to be said is that as much as there were complaints about gatekeeping back then when it came to movies or music or the news or everything, the fact is movies were better when there were gatekeepers. The news was better when there were gatekeepers. The music was certainly better when there were gatekeepers. We have to remember a lot of these artists that we like, AC/DC, went to see them, Def Leppard, or we could go in a different direction, Janet Jackson or the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. They all had to get past gatekeepers to be who they were. Now, granted, today, musicians have more in access, but what do we just have? We just have more bad music. And we have a lot of musicians who are making music who aren't making any money. You hear a lot of the old, like we even hear like Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden and other groups that, of course, made their money back in the day. They're like, man, we could have never done this today. There's no money to be made in music. Now, and maybe you say, maybe it's blamed on Spotify. So the problem, I think, is that I can't quit. And Lisa says I can't quit on this awesomeness. I can't either, Lisa, funny enough. So when it comes to Ashley Ford, 40 years ago, you would have never heard of Ashley Ford. You would never heard of her. Now you say, well, would we have heard of you, Ed? Don't know. Hard to say. But I think what I'm saying here is when I come to this microphone, when I do the podcast, when I come to this live show and everything else, I try to tell myself it's not 2025. I try to remind myself, let's just pretend it's like 1975 when it comes to the quality of the reporting and interviews and everything else. One of the big problems we have, I think, when it comes to true crime podcasting and all media these days is there's such a low entry fee. And so people, if they flame out or they do outrageous things and they fail, there's not a lot of cost for doing things badly. Whereas there was a time, of course, when it came to media and music and everything else, there was a very, very high cost to making a mistake. If a record company threw a lot of money at the wrong band, there was a lot. So what happened? They were much stingier with the money, but what did that cause? That caused all the musicians to be a hell of a lot better if they wanted to make a career in music. That's what happened. But the entry level for now in the 21st century is so low to get into all of this. It's just like with the indie filmmaking example. Oh, we can just get this camera and just go on film. We don't have to go to film school. We don't have to learn anything about lighting. We don't have to learn anything about directing. We don't have to learn anything about writing scripts or locations, nothing. We got this camera. We can just do it all. And that's why you get bad movies, because it all matters. As I have written, anybody with a mental illness, bipolar disorder, high on meth has access to millions of people in seconds. This is not good. This is not good. And I realize, are you saying I'm not necessarily against free speech. The only way we're able to control this in the United States is if the audience has higher expectations. The problem is there's like a little bit of the Howard Stern effect going on with all of this. What's the Howard Stern effect? Back in the 80s, when he was getting fined for, doing all those things that he was doing on public, on radio, not public radio, but at radio that could be accessed by anybody with a regular radio, is that what they discovered in studying him is that the people who hated him listened to him more than the people who loved him. There's just something about it. I think that's what's going on now. The reason we have so many these people like an Ashley Ford or whoever is because there's just too many dang people who love to see people be bad. It's one of those things, if you don't know this, on like American Idol, the singing show, which I've never watched, but this is true. The ratings get worse on American Idol as the singing gets better, as they narrow from this huge group, from 100 down to 50, down to whatever. As the singers, of course, they're weeding out the bad singers, keeping the good singers. As the singers that are on the show get better because they're weeding the bad ones out, the ratings go down. People tune into that show, and many others like it, to see people suck. It's like these shows where, these obstacle courses, people running around and getting, falling into the water and everything. The reason those have become so popular is people like to see other people fail. That's not a good trait and a character trait to have. Because that's what keeps this all going. Myself and others who are trying to do a good job, we can only do so much. It's up to all of you to turn the bad people off and not be so damn fascinated by them. That's what's going to fix media in this country. Nothing else. Freedom of speech, I love it. So all of us are just going to have to be better. And that will keep the Ashley Ford types from being able to access anybody. They'll try it once, nobody will listen, and they'll go away. That's what'll fix it. So that's my rant on that. And of course the other problem is, and I saw, I predicted this back like in the, what was it, Johnny Knoxville, the Jackass show that was on MTV. I predicted this way back then. As soon as you start telling people that they can act like idiots and with no talent or anything, and all they have to do is stupid, crazy stuff, and they'll get attention, they'll get paid to do it, you're just going to get more of that, because then people don't have to go take singing lessons or music lessons or acting lessons for years and years and years and years and get good at something. Everybody will just act stupid. That's how it works. There's a very low entry fee to fame and fortune. It's no wonder then that people take that. The only way to stop it is to stop paying attention to these people. So what are we going to be doing for this Friday? I already planned out. It's going to be a surprise. It's going to be something like what I did with Shanna Boydo, where unless some interview pops up in the next couple of days, I guess it could happen. But it's going to be another learning podcast, just like the Shanna Boydo one was. We have examples of disappearances that have been solved. Let's take a deeper look into why those got solved, because that's why we're here. We're here to solve disappearances. That's why we are here. We're not here to be sensational and to call people names or anything. The main job here at Unfound is to solve disappearances, teach people about disappearances, because we believe that then will lead to more disappearances being solved. So I'm going to use another solved disappearance from Unfound's catalog. Do a little commentary. I already know which one it's going to be. And hopefully everyone, including myself, will then be smarter on disappearances after Friday. In the meantime, I'll keep reaching out to people, and maybe I can make some interviews happen. But going on that rant that I did for the last 20 minutes, I can't help but think it is one of the issues, the problem I'm having now is because of this. Not necessarily because of me, but because of people, with missing persons families finding out about true crime podcasting and looking at a lot of it and saying, wow, this is really, really weird. Just saying. But that's it. That's all I got for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Please, before you leave, give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Keep your heads on swivels. Do not be victims. Do not end up as a missing person on Unfound. And Charlie, please say hi to the kids for me. Good night.